I visited my grandfather on the farm, and he was waiting for me with a big surprise. Good afternoon, For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Amber. I'm 29 years old, and today I'm here to share with you a story that I'm sure will surprise a lot of people. Before I fully introduce myself, I need to tell you what motivated me to come here and open up this very intimate part of my life to you. And believe me, the reason for all this is my grandfather. Yes, you've read the title of the video, and you already know that today's topic involves my grandfather. Before you start drawing conclusions or making judgments, I ask you to listen until the end, because I want to explain every detail and what really happened. I know that for some this may sound unexpected, but there are moments in our lives that make us question things we never imagined we would think about before. In my case, one doubt kept hammering away in my head. Does my grandfather still feel some kind of stimulation if I provoke him? It may sound strange, but this doubt really began to torment me. At his age, would he still have that flame, that desire that we see in younger people? At first, it was just a curiosity, an almost naive thought. But this idea evolved into a kind of silent provocation, an internal test, almost like a game I created for myself. Something that seemed like a silly question ended up turning into an experience I never imagined I would have. I imagine that some of you are already anticipating how this story will unfold, but believe me, it's much more complex than it seems at first glance. Every moment of this story has a weight, a meaning that will hold you until the very last second, and I promise, the ending will surprise you. So, get ready and stay with me, because I'm going to reveal every detail of this experience in which every little choice made all the difference. With long, curly blonde hair that falls down to my shoulders, vibrant blue eyes that shine brightly, and a confident posture, I'm 1.70 meters tall and weigh well over 60 kilos. My defined body is the result of the hours I dedicate to the gym here in Dallas, my city of heart. I've always been intense and free-spirited, a woman with a dash of daring who likes to enjoy every moment. From a young age, I discovered a passion for the intensity of a kiss and the pleasure of living each experience to the full. My essence is that of someone who lives without reservations, who gives herself completely to experiences that get the heart racing. When I'm looking for fun, I look for men who know how to arouse my curiosity, who understand the game of seduction, and are ready to dive into this adventure with me. I have no patience for indecision. I want someone who is sure of himself, who knows how to steer the moment, and isn't afraid to take me to explore the limits of pleasure. Adrenaline pulses through my veins, especially when I indulge in moments of pure passion. That sensation of a ravishing kiss, capable of making every cell in my body wake up, is something I really value. At those times, it's as if the world around us disappears, and all that's left is the intense, deep connection between the two of us. A connection that speaks louder than any words. Living intensely is my philosophy. I'm always open to new adventures and heart-racing encounters. After all, life is too short not to explore every nuance, especially those involving pleasure and mystery. With each new day, I seek the thrill of giving myself completely to the moments, enjoying each moment as if it were unique. There is nothing more liberating than leaving monotony behind and allowing myself to feel the unexpected, without reservation, with my heart and mind open to the unknown. Between comings and goings, and involvements here and there, I ended up meeting someone I decided to marry. He became my ex-husband, but we were married for 8 years, a phase of my life in which I had 2 children with him, Jared and Mia. They were intense and remarkable years, which left memories and an eternal bond through our children. After the divorce, I decided to dedicate myself to taking care of myself and to fulfilling an old dream, doing a master's degree in Europe. With this in mind, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to meet up with old friends and perhaps meet new people. The priority was the master's degree abroad, but with everything organized here, I started counting down the days. There was only 1 month left until my trip to London, where I would spend 2 years delving deeper into the studies I had always wanted to do. As I would be away for that time, I arranged to leave my children, Jared and Mia, with their father, ensuring that they would be well looked after while I pursued my dream. My trip was only a month away, and I decided to take advantage of this time to visit my paternal grandparents, who live on a farm in the countryside. The place is away from the city, very quiet, with hardly anyone passing by. When I arrived, I was greeted with open arms and a delicious colonial coffee, something I hadn't tasted in ages. My grandmother, Olivia, and my grandfather, James, are in their 70s, but you can hardly tell how old they are, as they are incredibly well preserved. It's amazing how people who live in rural areas, such as a farm or a ranch, are usually in robust health. I believe this is due to the more natural and simple way of life they lead, away from the stress and hustle and bustle of the city. My grandmother kept pampering me and offering me a variety of delicious things to eat. We spent hours chatting and catching up on gossip, laughing and reminiscing about family stories. "I can't believe it, Amber. You split up? He was such a nice man," my grandmother said, with a surprised look on her face. "Yes, Grandma, I split up. We weren't working out anymore, and I decided it was time to think more about myself, study, and look after my children," I replied, trying to convey the decision I had made. "That's right, my granddaughter. You need to think about what's best for you always," she said, with a tone of understanding and support, as only a grandmother knows how. My grandfather took his leave, mentioning that he needed to look after the farm, and soon it was just me and my grandmother in the room. However, a few minutes later, my grandmother also left to help my grandfather with some chores. I took advantage of that moment and told her I was going to take a shower to get rid of the laziness of the trip. As soon as I got into the bathroom, I put the door against it, but didn't close it all the way. As I sat under the shower, enjoying the warm water, I was taken by surprise when someone entered without warning. I didn't even have time to grab my towel. When I looked, who was there, catching me off guard? "Sorry, Amber. I didn't know you were there," said my grandfather with a surprised expression. "It was nothing, Grandpa," I replied, trying to keep calm in the midst of the unusual situation. If you like this infidelity story, don't forget to comment and like it. My grandfather couldn't look away from me. His eyes, which were more like a lion's, followed me up and down, as if trying to understand whether I was really his granddaughter. But there was something different about that expression. The bulge that stood out didn't go unnoticed. It was impossible to ignore. The crown seemed to have been visibly stimulated by the sight of me. The intensity of his gaze made my heart race, mixing nervousness with an inexplicable excitement that I couldn't control. I didn't know what had come over me, but instead of hiding, I decided to let him see me. Something stirred inside me, a desire to be noticed, to provoke that reaction in him. And as it turned out, he really liked what he was seeing. His eyes were fixed on me, unblinking, as if I were the only being in his world at that moment. The enchantment reflected in his gaze was undeniable, and this only intensified the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Every second seemed to drag by, and I could feel the tension in the air. The silence between us was palpable, as if there was a connection that went beyond words. I wondered how far it could take us, a fine line between what was acceptable and what could be considered taboo. But at that moment, all I wanted was to keep his gaze fixed on me, feeding that flame that seemed to grow with every beat of my heart. Desire and curiosity danced between us, creating an electrically charged atmosphere. The feeling of being completely exposed, but still wanted, was absolutely electrifying. I wondered if he realized how nervous I was, but at the same time, I didn't want him to interrupt that moment. That exchange of glances, that growing tension between us, was like a risky game that made me feel more alive than ever. I didn't want him to move away, for that magical moment to come to an end. That enchantment, that burning desire, were feelings that I wanted to explore until the very last moment. I continued showering, oblivious to the fact that he was there, watching me. It was as if time had stopped in that steamy, foggy bathroom. The water ran down my body, refreshing my skin as I resumed my shower. My grandfather stood there, unblinking at any moment, his gaze fixed on me. The intensity of that gaze immersed me in a mixture of fantasy and desire, as if I were in a dream. He, in turn, lowered his hand and I turned around, but I had already understood where it was, and this only increased my excitement, awakening a feeling of wanting more, of exploring that moment as far as it could take us. To provoke the situation further, I decided to break the silence and start a conversation. "What's wrong, Grandpa? Did I do something wrong?" The question escaped my lips, laden with a challenge that echoed through the stuffy room. "You've grown up, my granddaughter," he replied, his deep voice resonating but full of emotion. "Yes, I have. I'm a woman now, beautiful, single, and full of fire that needs to be put out." Adrenaline pulsed through my veins, and I could feel the tension in the air, as if the temperature in the room had risen. Every word I uttered seemed to intensify the situation, transforming that routine moment into something charged with emotion and unspoken promises. His gaze intensified, and I realized that we were beyond mere conversation. We were on the edge of something deeper and more dangerous. When I finished showering, I wrapped myself in the towel, still feeling his gaze on me, almost as if he could read every thought that went through my head. The bathroom door was ajar, and the light from the corridor illuminated the room, creating shadows that danced on the walls. It was then that I heard a familiar voice, a voice that cut through the tense air. It was my grandmother calling my grandfather. "Oh, James, where are you? Come and help me here." Her call sounded like a relief and an abrupt interruption. I felt a chill in my stomach, adrenaline pulsing, while my grandfather hesitated, still fixed on me for a moment, as if he were caught in a dilemma. "Go and see what Grandma wants. You'll have new opportunities to see all this again, my dear Grandpa." As soon as those words left my mouth, I could see the joy shining in my grandfather's eyes. But soon after, he was completely lost when he heard my grandmother's voice and left quickly, as if he had made a mess and didn't want to be caught off guard. I couldn't help it. I started laughing alone in the bathroom. Who knew that a man his age could still feel so alive, with that burning fire for a woman? The idea that he was still experiencing these emotions intrigued and excited me. It was as if a flame of daring had ignited inside me, and I was willing to venture into something that promised to be dangerous and exciting. A few hours later, we got together for lunch. The atmosphere was full of laughter and lively conversation, but I couldn't escape the feeling that my grandfather was watching me. His gaze was full of admiration, and he kept complimenting me. "You've grown up. Now you're a beautiful and charming woman," he would say, with a smile that lit up his face. I felt a little embarrassed, but there was an intense pleasure in hearing those words. To my surprise, my grandmother also joined in, supporting his every compliment. With my stomach already full, we stood there, exchanging a few words, talking about everyday things, when suddenly my grandmother let out that phrase I had been waiting for, a perfect cue for what I was about to do. It was as if that moment had been planned, orchestrated by fate. "I'm going to lie down for a while. Are you coming, James?" my grandmother asked, her voice tired. I could sense that something was about to happen. My heart was already racing. "Are you part of our community? There you have access to lots of other spicy channels like this one, so don't waste any time and join. I'm going to tidy up a few things here and I'll be right there. You can go ahead," my grandfather replied calmly, but there was something in his voice that made me shiver. Was it just me? Or did he know what was coming? Without wasting any time, I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth, which was really just an excuse to save time, to give myself the space to plan every detail. When I'd finished, I went straight to my room, where I carefully chose what I was going to wear. I put on a black skirt, which was simple but fitted perfectly, along with a white blouse. The contrast between the colors made me feel even more in control. I knew it was a bold choice, but it was exactly what I wanted. I went back into the kitchen room, the room still smelling of fresh food, and there he was, my grandfather, sitting at the table as if he were waiting. The air seemed thick, as if something invisible was in the air about to happen. He glanced at me, but in that look I could sense that there was a mutual curiosity in the air. "I'm going to take a walk around the farm. I want to get to know the place better," I said, But my intention was far from just exploring the outside area. There was a different kind of curiosity in me, something that was growing by the minute. I knew he would understand the invitation between the lines. Every step I took made my heart race even faster. As I left the house, I felt my grandfather's eyes on me, as if he wanted to decipher my every move. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. I walked towards the forest near the house, my heart beating faster and faster. With every step, a wave of adrenaline coursed through my body. Something in me wanted to provoke, to challenge, and I knew he wouldn't take his eyes off me. When I got further ahead, I couldn't resist. I turned and faced him. His gaze was locked on mine, intense. In a daring gesture, I took off one of my garments without looking away, letting him see every detail. I held the garment in the air for a few seconds, in a slow, provocative movement, before letting it hang, dangling from a tree branch that swayed gently in the wind. My body was on fire, feeling the weight of that irresistible tension. In an instant, he slammed the door shut in a hurry. He grabbed a blanket from the clothesline and began to follow me. I heard him cross the yard with firm, quick steps, determined. With every second, the anticipation grew inside me. There was no turning back, and the truth was that I didn't even want to. The game had begun, and I was totally surrendered. I entered the forest, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the dry leaves. Adrenaline was consuming me, the heat of the moment making my body tremble with excitement. I found a clearing, a flat spot covered in grass. There, in the middle of nature, I stripped myself of any fear. I leaned against a tree, feeling the rough texture against my bare back, the cool wind brushing across my skin. My body was on high alert, pulsing. Then I saw him coming. His gaze was devouring, full of urgency. Every step he took towards me made the air around me seem heavier, denser, charged with desire. There was no more room for words. The moment was about to explode, and the intensity between us spoke for itself. He was there, and I knew there was no stopping it. The impact of his presence made me hold my breath for a second as he came closer and closer. "You took your time, Grandpa. I didn't think you'd show up," I teased, with a mischievous smile on my lips. He looked at me with an expression of mixed surprise and desire. It was almost as if he couldn't believe that I was standing there like that, completely surrendered and ready for anything. But as soon as our gazes met, something in him changed. His play was big. I saw in his eyes that something was about to happen, and I knew exactly what it was that had grown there. Without saying a word, he approached slowly, almost in slow motion, increasing the anticipation in the air even more. Grandpa took a blanket that was at hand and spread it out on the floor, creating a comfortable space on the flat part that was there, as if he was setting the scene for something he knew would be unforgettable. "I think you've got something hidden that wants to come out, Grandpa. Why don't you let it out at once?" I let out the sentence in a challenging tone, knowing exactly what I was provoking. He smiled sideways, that smile that gives everything away, and began to loosen up. I saw him getting more and more comfortable, revealing what was behind his clothes. When it all finally came out, I was surprised, almost in shock. To give you a sense of what I was seeing, if I compared it to my husband's, it was twice as big, maybe even more. I couldn't help but feel a slight shiver of excitement mixed with nervousness. How could this be possible? "So, Grandpa, do you still know how to use it? Can you handle it?" I asked, causing my breathing to quicken once again. The look he gave me in response said it all. Not only did he know how to use it, he was about to show me exactly how. The atmosphere was charged with adrenaline, and my heart was racing, knowing that what was to come would be much more intense than I could have imagined. He suddenly went mute, looking at me with that intense gaze, full of desire and a hint of passion. There was something in his eyes that paralyzed me, a mixture of surprise and excitement that I couldn't ignore. He approached me slowly, unhurriedly, but with a firmness that made me shiver. When he stopped right in front of me, my heart almost leaping out of my chest, he did the unexpected. Without saying a word, he pulled me to him and gave me a deep kiss, the kind that makes the world around you disappear. That moment was like a hurricane of emotions. The touch of his lips ignited something inside me, and before we knew it, we were lying on the blanket on the forest floor. The smell of the trees, the distant sound of nature, everything conspired to make that moment unforgettable. We lay there for what seemed like an eternity, but was also only a few seconds, maybe 15 minutes. But time was irrelevant, because our desire only grew. We knew we were on the edge, both of us barely able to control what we were feeling. I could feel his every muscle contracting with pleasure. Finally, the moment we had been waiting for arrived. The desire that pulsed inside us exploded, and we gave ourselves completely to that moment, without any more reservations, as if nothing else in the world mattered. If you like this infidelity story, don't forget to comment and subscribe to the channel. Then, still out of breath, we fell on the blanket, side by side, exhausted, but with a satisfied smile on our faces. The relief and peace we felt were indescribable. It was then, in the midst of that comfortable silence, that we remembered something crucial. Grandma was asleep at home. The shock of the memory made us get up at once. We got dressed quickly, our clothes a little crumpled, our hearts still racing. Without saying another word, we ran towards the house, laughing quietly at our own folly. The adrenaline was still flowing, but now we had to return to reality, trying to disguise everything that had just happened. As soon as we arrived at my grandparents' house, I was surprised to see that Grandma was still awake. My heart raced, my chest tensed, and I prepared myself to think fast. But before I could even open my mouth to make up any excuses, she asked, direct as always, "Where were you?" I felt my face heat up and tried to come up with a convincing answer, but I didn't have to. My grandfather, always so firm, calm, and with that look that left me speechless, was the one who took the lead. With a firm and decisive voice, he answered without hesitation, "I was showing her the farm, Olivia. Oh, and there's one more thing, you see. Our granddaughter Amber is staying here all week." When I heard that, my heart leapt, and it wasn't from fright. It was more a mixture of surprise and excitement. I looked directly at my grandfather, and our eyes met for an instant that seemed longer than it should have been. He didn't say anything else, just waited for me to react, and inside I was boiling. Without thinking too much, I nodded my head in agreement, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. At that moment, my silence spoke louder than any words I could have said. Suddenly, the whole thing about staying just 2 days at the farm, as had been planned, completely lost its meaning. After all, why would I want to leave so soon? There was something in the air, something strong, something that held me there in a way that I couldn't, and in fact, didn't even want to, fight against. The feeling that I was about to experience something forbidden, something risky, was eating me up inside, and the craziest thing about it was that I wanted to feel more, much more. I knew I'd been led down a path of no return, and the prospect of spending the whole week there, with him, made me burn with anticipation. The idea of leaving, of going back to normal life and leaving it all behind, seemed absurd. That place, my grandparents' house, the farm with its silence, the smell of wet earth, everything was enveloped in a different, almost magical atmosphere. It was as if time was passing more slowly, more intensely, and every second at my grandfather's side seemed to carry a weight, a tension that built up and kept growing. I no longer cared about the idea of staying just 2 days. What had started out as a simple family visit had turned into something much bigger. I felt that the decision to stay longer wasn't just my choice. It was as if something bigger was pulling me, trapping me in that situation of desire, adrenaline, and danger. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen over the next few days, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to get out of there anytime soon. The fire that had been lit inside me wouldn't be put out easily, and I was more than willing to let it burn to the end. I wasn't going to run away from it, not when every fiber of my body was clamoring to keep going. It was the beginning of something I'd never imagined I'd experience, and I wasn't ready to let it end so quickly. Are you already part of our exclusive YouTube community? If the answer is no, you're really missing out on time, and above all, Many opportunities to discover a universe full of content like this, made especially for those who, like you, love a good dose of adrenaline mixed with that spicy touch that makes the heart race. Here, we don't just deliver stories, but intense experiences that make your imagination travel to places you've never imagined. So how about joining us right now? I guarantee that once you're inside, you'll discover that this story is just the tip of the iceberg of everything we have in store for you. And the best part, once you're in the community, you'll have access to several other channels full of stories and videos, each one hotter than the last, ready to put your senses on high alert. Don't waste any time, really. Every second outside this universe is one less second of adrenaline, pleasure, and that thrill that only those who are inside know. And the coolest thing? By signing up, you're part of something much bigger. We are a community that grows every day, with people who, just like you, are looking for stories that involve, awaken desires, and make every heartbeat stronger. Here, you'll feel that energy coursing through your body as you read, watch, and listen to stories specially designed to move you, leaving no room for boredom or monotony. So, did you enjoy this story? Don't forget to let me know in the comments. Seriously, I love to know what you think of each story. Every opinion is important. Every comment makes all the difference and motivates me to keep bringing you more and more hot stories, full of intensity, and that really touch the feelings and desires of those who follow the channel. Reading what you write makes me even more excited to continue, because I know I'm touching each of you in a unique and special way. So enjoy this moment, and let me know what you think. Don't be afraid or ashamed to tell me what you felt. If it gave you goosebumps, if it made your heart race, I want to know everything. Oh, and don't forget something super important. Subscribe to the channel. Just click down there, it's quick, easy, and makes all the difference. When you subscribe, as well as being part of this ever-growing community, you guarantee that you won't miss any videos. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's to come. There are many more electrifying stories on the way, each one more intense than the last, full of details that will make your skin crawl and your desire grow with every second. Now, a detail that many people forget, but is essential. Activate the little bell. When you activate notifications, you'll know everything firsthand. It's like an exclusive invitation to the next stories, and I can assure you, what's coming is going to excite you even more. These are stories you won't want to miss. So activate the little bell now and get ready to be surprised by each new video. With each story posted, the anticipation grows. And when you're prepared, the experience becomes even more intense and engaging. And of course, I couldn't miss that special request. Leave your like. It sounds simple, but it's essential for the channel to keep growing, and for me to be able to bring you more and more hot, intense, and emotionally stirring content. Each like is a way of telling me that I'm on the right track, that you're enjoying what you see, and that you want more. What's more, with your like, the channel gains visibility. More people discover it, and together, we make this community grow even more, uniting people who, like you, seek strong emotions and unforgettable experiences. Remember, there's more tomorrow. I'm already preparing the next report, and I assure you, it's coming with everything. Get ready to dive into another story full of adrenaline, spiciness, and moments that will make you feel that explosion of sensations. So don't waste any time. Keep an eye out, because tomorrow you'll have another intense experience waiting for you. See you in the next story, and I'm sure you'll love what's to come. See you tomorrow, and get ready for another journey into the unknown, where anything can happen, and at every moment your heart will beat faster. Don't miss it. It's going to be unforgettable.